You go down started.
You know, the summer is his busiest time.
Oh, yes. So I've always been.
That's going to play out here first.
How are you, sir?
You're interested. I think I'm okay. I can't afford to miss a part. Nobody's told me different today. You know, no time. Seems like it's been so long.
Well, and I didn't make it in December. So, yeah.
4 minutes?
Things like that, you know?
That's right. I showed up for the January one that didn't exist.
Well, yeah, so there was a notice sent out, and I looked at it, and I
I pulled in here and like, no, I think there was one car, only one other person didn't get the memo. Yeah. You are in the front. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Oh.
Nice.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. But for whatever reason, I've been saying I was not schedule every single time, so.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to bring I'm going to buy and I'm going to bring. Hi, Matt. You're not buy and I'm going to bring always wants to see their map.
No.
Oh, okay.
And I
Remember the
think
book
so
you gave me, and I think you came back and got it?
Oh, I may have, I got copies.
I promise Andy.
You bring that too?
I'll look for it.
So Corvallis has done a really cool year-over-year population.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to know who you are.
Closures to
It is actually helpful.
You know, so we're gonna, and I'll talk about it here in a minute. Like, we're gonna have to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
You got a guy here that's kind of slightly behind him. So, I did. I think I got a couple of random things I ordered came in today. So probably.
Yeah, I'll look for them. They're on my computer, I'll have to.
Oh, don't worry too much. Even if it comes here in a little bit, because I think that how we separate the work here and allow it to connect is going to be really important. Well, right. So, Dave, do you know anything? Becca, do we have a clicker?
Oh, right over here.
Okay. There you go. All right, we'll get going. Thank you guys all for coming. First of all, I really appreciate the catch-up meetings where we get to have unfettered discussion for the most part in a group of one or two. We've got a lot of flu tonight.
Really?
Yeah, which, but I have been, like we're right now 100%. What's that? Not here, not in the room. Yeah, but we right now are intact. Most of the people that have noticed this today that they won't be here are already, working with Chris to set the meeting. So we have a group, but it's so important that we learn together. So really want you guys to continue to be a part of this because I think the work is going to be more thoughtful and challenging as we go forward. If I go back, we learned from Carol Samuels what a bond at 4 different amounts could raise. And the number was what, 150 million, a little bit over that, right? And then to raise taxes got us a little bit more. Good to see you. We also learned from JL at Public Affairs Council that to not exceed the current tax rate had about a 68% approval rate on an initial survey. People were not presented with a bill. If you vote yes, you're going to pay that, which would probably tend to make it a little more of a undertaking. But he thought that number was pretty good. He also cautioned us. The question just below that, which he called his canary in a coal mine, was that is a fairly, this is an economic term, elastic demand, which is it responds quickly to price. In other words, demand to say yes will drop if we go very far above that. We saw that in the Lynn County election. JL had surveyed at the same rate the Marion County or the Lynn County law enforcement. To just replace the rate, he had pulled it at 60% yes. They raised it by 10 cents. Do you guys remember what the number was that eventually passed?
How much about 50?
Very close. I think it was 52.8 or something like that. So in other words, to go up in price above tends to draw the number of yeses down fairly quickly, right? So those are the things, and that was good. And then we have since gone through enrollment, and we know we now have an additional challenge there. So I want to talk with you guys a little bit about that as we get going. So, but anyway, welcome. I appreciate this. Joni, was there something you guys wanted to take through that?
Yeah, just really quick, want to go high level, talk about the agenda for tonight. You'll notice that Amy is not with us this evening. Unfortunately, she was sick. So the boss is not here. But working through tonight, we want to go over real quick kind of schedule review of where we are in the process. We want to also get some feedback on some of the tours. I know that we've had some folks in the room that's gone on some site tours, so want to get some thoughts and feedback there. We did a lot of really great work last December in our last meeting, just kind of prioritizing and thinking about different packages and what those could look like, and so we want to review some of those, ensure that we've captured that correctly. I think that's going to lead to some really great small group discussion as we move into that, and then we'll get into a break. After that, we have, based off of those lists and those scenarios and those priorities, we've got what we call test fits. And so we wanted to look at some of these sites individually. We've worked with the principals and some of the administrators to get an understanding of some of those site needs and requirements. And when I say test fit, that's exactly what it is. You know, we're not looking to design a solution right now. We want to make sure that it fits on the site, that you can get access to it, and there's some phasing abilities and things like that. So, and then we want to talk about kind of site-specific priorities and then get into another group exercise. And this group exercise will be very similar to the group exercise we did in December, but it will be informed by additional detail, additional cost information, and some additional scenarios and opportunities. So with that,
Okay. So I want to just kind of take us back to the original purpose of this, which is to build a long-range facility plan. And just remind everyone here that we represent the community as a whole, right? Now, JL did give us numbers based on people who voted in the last 3 elections and the last 4 elections, and he puts weight in that. And that is clearly one of the things that we need to think about. But we do represent the broad community here. I want to talk about polling. I had mentioned that at the end of the last meeting, and I think I'll go into it in a little bit of detail. As we work through tonight's scenarios, we may see that we continue to have diverging priorities. In order to make sure that this group can continue as a cohesive group, we want to take those results as a third point, because it makes us democratic and it makes us responsive to the community. We can find out what their preferences are, what their concerns are, what would make them mad, and what wouldn't. And so I talked with JL, asked him about this. He said, we do that a lot in the middle of a process, and not just wait for the end. We do it a lot to see that we are not drifting, or that we aren't just like at loggerheads in the room, right? So if we can't reach agreement, that's something that we can test. But we can test on a lot of things. What that would look like is, if we will do something here to begin to develop questions, we will take that to JL, because he has done this before. He will say, here's the best way we would word that, here's the best way we would word that. We would see that, and we would probably, in between meetings, send it out to you guys for comments or suggestions. Then we would go back and we would have him do that. He thinks that, you know, once he gets to a final draft, he can get it done in a week. They go at night, they call, and they just run it out. Again, about 400 people would be what they would need. So we can take anything here that is in question or that we think we need more information on and have that survey built. I don't really want to run one every month, right? Because it does cost about $15,000. We do have an old bond fund with about $4 million in it. And I have always been questioned by the media on this. And I always tell them, we are looking at a question for $160 million worth of improvements. And we want to do it right. And we don't want to miss. That is an investment that connects us to the voters. I support doing that. I will answer that question every time, the same way. All right, here's a fun one. So school closures, we are now, you guys learned that we have fewer students enrolled. And so the real question then is a bond with school closures not kind of antithetical to each other? And I think that the case can be made that it's really difficult to do one and not the other, right? In other words, if we were to say we are going to close schools and have that be the message at the same time as the bond, we would have to tread very carefully around that, because we could end up sending an inconsistent message. I think that there is a very consistent method to both. Our schools average over 70 years in age, whatever it is, and we have to take care of them. And our buildings require care going forward, because not just that they are old, but all buildings do. Our new buildings have projects that need to be attended to. And so we need to work on that. Our buildings are also very small, right? I think Tim had asked the question, first meeting, 14 elementaries in a district this size. I would think that the average for a district of 8,500 kids would be somewhere in the realm of 8 to 10, with probably closer to 350 kids in each, right? And so the very small size of some of our buildings means that, for example, you can't even put a halftime music teacher in some of our buildings, right? All of a sudden you have a music teacher going to 3 buildings, right? And so people, you wouldn't believe this, but most music teachers would rather be in one, right? So the demand, so there are things that we have already not been able to have within our kids' day because our buildings are small. I don't think that we can all of a sudden come up with a plan, though, to build like 3 new big elementary schools and meet everything else we need to do, right? Because that's more than probably what we would take alone. So we have to think about how we do that. I also think we can pull and we can be in touch with our community in general, but when you begin to close a school, the parents of a given elementary school are not represented here tonight in person. And so there has to be a process to get there. And you have to really go through people. That's how I think. To put something out all of a sudden, hey, by next fall these are going to close, becomes very problematic. People feel taken off guard, right? There's a sudden change. And I point to 2 districts. Corvallis did a lot of work to close schools. They took their time. They had a committee meet for a whole year. It was such a well-run process, and they had kind of reached a point where nobody was really interested, that the school board themselves said, add another school for next year. And all of a sudden, crowds. Now a recall, right? So we can't do it that way, not as I see it. But we do need to think about how we would do that. I am not interested, like we can separate an event or a decision from the time it actually occurs, right? So we have a lot of different options there. The one thing that we must also think about is we have to be mindful in what we propose for a bond so that we don't invest in schools that would close within a short period of time, right? Westland-Wilsonville, you guys follow that at all? Westland-Wilsonville talked about closing schools last February at this time. Outcry, they said, we're not going to close any schools. We won't even look at that till 2027. They had a bond that said they would do some repairs at all schools. It passed in November of this year. 2 weeks later, they came out and said, we're closing 2 by next year. They are in the throes of hearing from their community there, so we cannot offend that way either, right? So we're gonna have to be thoughtful, but I do want you to be mindful and think tonight as we're going through this and the costing scenarios, and when we close up, I want you thinking about what would we ask in a poll? What could we ask in a poll? Probably won't be super excited if you say, we need to ask in a poll if we should close Central, right? Because that even the polling will send that message out and it will be a tell. But we do need to think about what would be in the bond and how supported would that be, right? And so my thinking is how to do one and not offend the other, but to do both, not necessarily in the exact same period of time, but how we might do that, right? So anybody's thinking, I'm more than happy to have lunch with you as we go forward on that, okay? So that's quite a fun topic, but we can't avoid it. I see myself as a public servant. If this is what we have to do, and I'm here, then that's my charge, what we agreed to and what the board agrees to. And so with that, we'll approach the work. Keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll work on this. We have some months and a whole year. So, okay, go ahead, Jonah.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that. So just as a reminder, project schedule, kind of where we are in the process. In terms of meetings, long-range facility planning meetings, we're at the halfway point. You know, we've had our 3 meetings with our last meeting in December. We're looking to wrap up meetings in April. There's still a lot of work to be conducted afterwards. The long-range facility plan report has to be drafted. And, you know, obviously if the intention is to go out for a bond, you know, here's what that timeline might look like for a May vote, a May 2027 vote. There are some critical components as far as submissions to ODE to make sure that we hit those targets. So, again, we got plenty of runway, which is nice. We have a deadline of December 1st for both the facility condition assessment and the long-range facility planning report. And then 2 weeks after that is when the Awesome Grant application needs to be put in. And so that, again, as a reminder, that's that state match opportunity, and that gets you in the queue for getting that state match. Committee attendance, you know, the district has done an exemplary job just keeping folks informed, you know, and making sure that people are having the makeup meetings as needed. So just wanted to encourage you again, as we move forward, if there's a need to make up a meeting, there's some dates targeted there, March 5th, 6th, and 11th. Again, just email Chris if there's a makeup needed. Anything to add to that at all, team? Great. So how do you get to a long-range facility plan? We've all seen this slide before. Last time we really came up with what we called kind of the ideation, really kind of understanding some of the scenarios. We're going to be testing some of those scenarios, getting some test fitting, like I mentioned earlier, and some cost modeling and analysis today. That will, I think, inform even further that process. After that, as Andy had mentioned, really kind of reaching out to JL and getting the survey out and gathering that community feedback, especially folks that aren't involved in this committee, and then looking to prioritize and right-size those concepts after that, based off of the feedback you get there. I know that several folks in this room have been part of the tours, and my understanding is they're kind of spread throughout the groups here. Can anybody raise their hand that's been on one or more site tours? Great, great. Any thoughts or feedback as you do that? What I'd encourage you to do when we get into the small group discussion, kind of use that as well, just for folks that may have a question on some of those tours, kind of help facilitate some really good feedback. But I'd love to hear if there's been any observations, kind of, you know, feel free to shout it out, or, you know, if you have any thoughts on any of those site tours.
Yes.
Tanya?
So I have been on most of them, and I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I thought about is, at the end of the December meeting, I think it was, there's the GAPS Guiding Principles document. And if you look at that document, then there are like little bullet points underneath it and says, in terms of, this is a guiding principle that we have for our students, for our district. How might that look, and how might facilities support those learning goals, outcomes? And I think that's a really, I've shared this with Andy, I think that's a really nice piece of work that's been done. And as I've gone through the sites, sometimes I have been to a site that I think personally cannot possibly meet those goals. And so I thought, well, when we get to the point where maybe the committee needs to go to some specific sites to maybe to gather, you know, I'm happy to share why I think that, you know. And so as we go along, like there've been a few sites I feel like as a group maybe we should consider all going together. And then there've been things where I'm like, okay, this is what it feels like. Like if I were a student in this space, it feels like a real quality learning environment. And we just saw that yesterday, actually, at South Shore, the new, where they took down all the modulars, and especially if you've ever been to those modulars, they were real rough. And now it's a really terrific space. And so I've been trying to think about how might we as a committee think about the learner in this setting?
Right.
I have a Post-it note with polling questions. Like I really have some curiosities about what are priorities for the community. What do they want for the children in the community with these facilities? So I have some ideas around that. And there's a lot to do. There is a lot to do out there. There's a lot of properties. And I've been through 2 bonds, you know, of this district. I came in when, not the last bond, but the bond before that. That's just when I came as an employee, and it was the last year of finishing all those things, and then went through this process, and we, you know, were successful in getting the bond from the community, and it was in the first year of putting things into place after getting that. And so even with all of those, all that money, there's still a lot to be done.
Right, right.
And so thinking about the lens for how are we going to prioritize, I just found that document to be helpful.
Great. Appreciate the thoughts there, Tanya. Anybody else have any thoughts? And again, in your small group discussions, when we get into that, I'd lean on the expertise of Tanya and other folks that went on these tours. There are some upcoming tours as well, still on the docket. Got open appointments on February 12th, February 25th. David, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I did. So we're at the end of our tours. You can see the next 2 are just kind of open appointments. But I would entertain, I may have you just discussed your group. Do you want me to repeat this schedule and send it out again and do another round? If people are interested in now, since you've seen some mock-ups, you want to go to specific sites. So I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do individual appointments with people that want to come and see a site and do it that way. So I'd be looking to you folks about, okay, if you want to get in the building, I'm happy to support that because I think it's really valuable to see it. But this may not have fit your schedule. Maybe we need to do more nights, maybe more a weekend where we hit 5, 6, you know, or 7 sites and get a bus and drive around and do it that way. So why don't, if you could just talk to your table a little bit and about that, or what options might be good to give me a little direction, or maybe we've done enough. I don't know. So.
One thing that I would add to the committee is that if this seems overwhelming, like I just cannot commit that much time, I don't have that kind of schedule, is that there are some sites that you could get, like for example, Tahkeena Oak and South Shore are essentially, their main building is the same footprint. Waverly, Sunrise, and Liberty are essentially kind of the same footprint. So you could be, just pick one of those 3 each as a representative, and you could discuss the differences they might have in terms of needs, in terms of HVAC systems or those sorts of things. And you would, I think, get a pretty clear picture, and you could whittle, I think, narrow it down, the number of tours as a potential if you didn't have all that time.
So each of your tables has at least one person that's had been on tour. So why don't you talk about, if the person at the table, what have you seen on the tours, and then talk as a group about one of the next steps. We'll take 2 minutes, and then I'll get some recommendations from you about how we might move forward. So why don't you just talk to the tables for about 2 minutes. Each got a person that's been on a tour. Why don't we start with that?
I only have 3.
I didn't do it, but you probably would have given them. I haven't, well, you came to my building too, but, and I haven't been on the tour, but I've been to all the buildings. We're in each other's buildings all the time, so I have an idea of what that is.
So I only went.
Okay.
So I went to what was mentioned.
Yeah.
And then on South Shore, what I know about that, because South Shore came last. And it's surprised all over South Shore. It was a feeling change. Well, that's a big deal. But South Shore, it opened this big. What I know about South Shore,
Proud of it, or noisy, or
really addition. Once you walk out of that addition into the other building, there's
I can't imagine that working.
This large group is pretty difficult.
I don't know if I have
I'm just trying to show.
I probably was not.
Well, I have been in it at one point or another. I've been in all of them. So I don't really have much interest or need to look at the specific experiences because I know.
I know we have it in this.
So, what are the priorities of the school that you would like to see more? I would certainly.
Higher priority school.
Very helpful.
And as for Tanya just said, of course, three middle schools, the same, three.
I like the proposed tours, right? We have a big convention.
Memorial and cafeteria. So if you take those three, and you say they're the same footprint, you could have the exact same HVAC issues, electrical issues, roofing issues, vestibule, access. If I don't need a tour, all I need to do is two of them, or, and I hope Bill, I'm familiar with the new operating. So I know that only my
I've been to all of it. My kids went through it.
how long
It's not cutting edge by any means.
One of the difficulties in the last month,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
every building got touched.
Yeah. Greater also.
Bruce always there were
Then you
there were facilities there. Small 10-year roofs on some of these properties.
And so closing it.
Well, to try to spread money out a little bit further.
Okay,
May not even need
Rob.
Then you're treading water with a 10-year river.
Great.
All right, what do you think?
I think we should get a comment from each group.
Sure, what do you guys think?
Put everybody on the spot.
Who wants to start? Danny, your table?
We talked about if we go through the budgeting or the idea, where is the most money looking to be spent? Going to go see those buildings again and kind of putting, okay, this is why we want to spend the larger percentage at these buildings.
Okay.
Great time.
We agree with that, and then also the idea of just going to a few of the schools that are similar. I mean, not needing to go to every single one, but going to one of each of the different layouts, like one middle school, one of the elementaries. So if people really wanted to get in, making it a smaller tour.
Okay. All right.
So I have one question to add on to that, or since we're throwing in the closure discussion now,
Kind of.
should we not kind of talk about spending so much money at some of the schools that potentially could be closed down?
Absolutely.
And not spend the time touring those sites and put more focus into the ones that you guys really want to get behind and build up and put more money into
It might
those?
be important to see the sites that we're considering closing, so that when the community's asking us, why did you make that decision? You can, with your eyes wide open, be able to answer why. I mean, some of the properties are pretty shocking.
I would, go ahead.
Well, and I would echo that. I think it's important if we have these slate of buildings and we look and you see, okay, to take, and I think, I'll use an example. One night we did North Elway Elementary in Oak Grove. So you saw this and so you could see what they're, what that school is dealing with. And you're like, okay, to get this thing up to snuff, what's it gonna take? And then you go to Oak Grove and you go, wow, this is brand new. So I think to the point of when we start having the discussion of we're gonna have to address this, but then have options in place as opposed to, and I think to go to Andy's comments earlier, it's like you can't just go to people and say, hey, we're closing your school. You gotta give them the option. Wouldn't you like to do this? Because we can't, because this isn't gonna be sustainable. So I would suggest it's a matter of, those might be some more targeted tours, Dave, at some point. And I also say it's been helpful to have somebody from facilities go along, because there's so much you don't see. You don't see all the stuff up here and what that, and then you start talking about cost, because so much of the cost in some of these upgrades we're talking about, nobody ever sees. And so I think that was very helpful too.
Well, I will say our tours have been better when we've had principals, because they live in the space. That's been helpful. And Lauren's presence, because he's in the building so much, and his knowledge has been helpful too.
And you're exactly right, Dave. It's totally different going at night, and then you go there, you see the kids there, you see how things operate there.
Yeah.
To the example of Oak Grove and North Albany, and knowing the night and day of that, back to, and it's probably in all the data we have, which of those schools can absorb those children?
Yes.
Those students. So that we then can begin to build a story that says, well, a newer school can take X or Y.
Yeah, you can kind of do this, because the way they conducted the tour, they give you those sheets, you're kind of doing this math in your head, but this makes sense in the proximities. But I would go back and say at some point, and this is something I thought, at some point, whether, as far as, are we going to address closing schools or not? That, I believe, that's got to come from district leadership and the board.
That's right.
Because if that's not on the table, then we're wasting our time.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to, okay, we will, and here's what we see as the best places, based off of the numbers that we're seeing, based off of the enrollments that we're seeing, based off of the community growth that we're seeing. These are the things, because then you can put together a plan going, okay, that starts to make more sense, and that gives us a plan to communicate to that part of town and say, hey, folks, here's what our plan is, and here's why it's gonna be better. You can't walk through, and this is no disrespect to North Albany Elementary. I think the staff does a great job, it's in great shape. The facility's done a fabulous job just keeping that thing alive, but you walk through there and you say, hey, I'm gonna send my kid here, and then you go to Oak Grove.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow, someone's getting shortchanged on that one. So, anyways.
So this is what I heard. I think we should table doing another round of this until next meeting. We have this little short discussion again, because I think your work tonight may inform where you want to go. But know this, if you want to see a specific site, I'm available. Lauren's in probably 4 or 5 buildings every day. So if you want to tag along with him, he can accommodate as well. So reach out to me. If you don't have my email, I'm happy to do. I'm in buildings 3 days a week. I try to get in buildings 3 days a week. So I'm already there. You can join me, and I can go anywhere you want to go. So
Great.
Okay.
Appreciate
Let
it.
me just say a few things. As we move forward, we are currently developing for budget our personnel costs and ratios per school. We will add, Dave will add to that our utility costs to that school and look at that on a per student basis. You guys already have the building capacities. We will be bringing to you as well, they didn't get it done today, they thought they would be close, but Alex Brash from the population study that we got, he will turn the building populations for all of our buildings into a 10-year process. We will also provide you guys with attendance boundaries at the elementary, then at the middle school, and at the high school, right? The only thing that I would ask is that how and when we make those decisions, like I believe there's a lot of people in this district that would say, what are you gonna do about that? And I think it's grown more urgent because other districts are now doing it, right? So it's becoming more normed, which creates, I think, risk for us to not begin to think about that and to communicate that. We still have a lot of ways to go about doing that. Like, you know, Dick stopped Central from being closed. But he's also shared with me the circumstance. It was done on a sudden attack, and he led the counterattack, right? Because he had the, what are they doing? So I think you have to go through people and have them talk about things and work their way to it, exactly as Pat said. But that is the information we will be bringing to you guys to think about so that we can articulate a really good case for that work.
And Andy, one thing I might just add, because it's been rolling around my head, at some point, it would be nice to get an idea from our board, our focus. We're talking about it, so much of our discussion is about elementary schools.
Uh-huh.
And then we have how many of them?
14.
14 of them. How many high schools do we have?
Two point
Three, we have three high schools. So all the students that fall through this district are gonna go through one of 14 elementary schools, one of 4, you know, middle schools, right?
Yeah.
And one of 2.5 or 3 high schools. And I wonder sometimes if we also need to shape our focus and go, what are our main priorities? They're all gonna go through here and here. They might not go through here, and I think that also is, it's an emotional thing because that's where my little kid goes to elementary school.
Yeah.
But as a district, where do we, as we start looking at funds and the needs at the high, go to the high schools and look at the needs that are there. You know, they're all going through there, and the needs at the middle schools, well, they're all gonna go through one of 4 of those.
Yeah.
But then we've got to make these, even if we make a decision on, or the board makes a decision on 2 or 3 elementary schools, that's still 10. So where do we, what's our view here?
Yeah, to that, I think that this group would need to carry all those things in its mind. But I would say this though, Pat, like right now, we have 2 major currency in our realm, right? One is 4-year grad rate, right? And the district does a pretty good job of that. The other is 3rd grade literacy. And we have to put a lot of resource there too, right? And that is the huge push, and what the state, you know, Mississippi made a move, and that is a huge push, and we need to be mindful of that. They have to have good conditions for that to occur in, right? So we have to be thoughtful. We probably have a disinvestment over like 40 years. This district has done 2 great bonds in the last 20 years, right? But the district also went a long time. Bob has explained it to me, right? It was a bunch of little districts. That's why we have a bunch of little schools, right? And so now what will we do about that? And so, we're gonna have to wrestle with that. We're gonna bring all that information to you. I do intend, and we have tentatively planned a board work session, I wanna say it's April, that is not budget related, but is LRFAC related, where they will hear about the progress of this group, where some members of this group will present some of the thinking of this group, and of course, I update them constantly about what's going on, right? We are without 2 board members tonight. One had the flu and one had an emergency. So there's no real reporting, but I'm generally the major reporter anyway. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. So there's a lot of information that we will be giving you guys. We'll try to work so that you have some sort of a workbook around capacity, enrollment, cost per building, boundaries. That way we can work with that information as we go. But I think if you read the papers and just kind of keep up on things, you're going to see that there are going to be a lot of districts that are currently engaging in this. It is becoming a more normal thing right now, and of course that will probably continue to evolve. Okay.
Great discussion, team. So we'll breeze through the recap of workshop 3 here pretty quickly. But what I want to show you here is just this slide. So a lot of the costs that you've seen thus far are kind of more facility assessment related, you know, bringing things up to code, thinking about life safety and health. These are items that have been identified in our last workshop, but are more program related, you know, improving educational adequacy and thinking about that. We've worked with our independent cost estimator to get a sense for what these might cost for these individual items. So basically we got a square footage allocation, cost per square foot based on those. Of course, all the fun total costs with general conditions, overhead and profit, general requirements, contingency, and things like that. And then escalated it out to 2028, just to give a sense. So that kind of gives a good idea of why the difference between here and here. Everything you see in gray is either a modification to what we've already discussed or something new or something the committee has asked us to look at. So one of the items, as an example, Millersburg, we were looking at a 600 student capacity elementary school. We want to just take a look at what does a 500 student capacity elementary school look like in terms of cost. Again, West Albany High School, there's been a lot of really great work between December and now to get a good handle on kind of the long-term plan for that, right-sizing the facility, and ensuring that we have all the programmatic needs and requirements met. So we met with the principal over there and kind of right-sized that and developed a program. And I think the good news is the cost is trending down towards replacement of the additional classroom space at West Albany. But also I want to just point out there is this item, keep the gym. If you remember, there were seismic improvements done, and the gym has to stay operational for 10 years after those seismic improvements. So that's part of the reason for looking at that. And then down here, you know, again, 700-seat auditorium at South Albany. Just what does that cost? You know, a big kind of bucket in the sky to make it comparable to West Albany. And then we've been asked by this committee just to look at kind of track resurfacing, new turf fields for football, softball, and baseball, and then also South Albany pool repairs, you know, what that might cost there. One thing I might add, it's a little misleading right here. The new secured vestibule of the existing schools, that's per school. So that's not overall the entire school. So it's approximately $400,000 per school. You got all this information in front of you as well in your packet, so we can go into some more detail there. This is, again, is just a recap of what we heard last time, and we developed really 7 scenarios amongst 5 groups. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on each, but one thing I do want to point out is the costs have changed based on, again, independent cost estimating, get a better sense and better handle on the scope there. So that's just to describe why some of those costs have changed. Also, in some of these scenarios, this is an example. Let's just pick one, ADA fixtures. The reason why you'll see here that this is substantially lower than maybe in some of the other scenarios is because a lot of those improvements would be needed at Central Elementary, as an example, whereas this takes into account closing Central and adding Takina, so you wouldn't have that cost. So does that make some sense on maybe why there's some cost differentials between those? So again, I'm not going to, we've got all the information in front of us here, but if there is a question, basically what we try to do is balance it out as much as we could to the $168 million. So You'll see for the most part, these are on track. Green means it's under, red means it's higher, essentially. So scenario 2 in group 1, that was the replacement of the remaining West Albany High School, and with the revision of to 105,000 square feet. Again, pretty close there with 168. Everybody did a pretty good job. We did have a little bit of a bust in group 3, but not substantial. There are some of these you'll see with asterisks because some of these items were identified as either with remaining funds, if you will, or balancing. They all kind of have different things. So that's kind of what we tried to do there in those scenarios. But we want you to take a look at those and kind of vet those out as you move through there. Group 4, this one was quite a bit over, to be honest. So you'll kind of notice a big part of that again was South Albany High School was included, West Albany High School was included. So that just gives you a sense for what was there. And then group 4, a lot of parallels, and you'll see in a slide later kind of some of the recurring themes that we saw coming up and how many votes, if you will, were for that. This was a very ambitious list. Did a really great job on the ledger, but got a really good sense from kind of secure vestibules, roof repair, envelope improvements, but also looking at that 6th classroom elementary school addition there. And addition of cooling as well. Again, kind of the balance, I think 50 million was what was identified last time. Again, we just looked at trying to balance that as much as possible. So we're going to try to make up a little bit of time just to make sure we stay on schedule here. We would like to get some general observations based off this, so maybe we can keep it to 5 minutes and then have a 5-minute report out. Talk amongst your group. If there's anything either you've been thinking about since the last time we did this exercise, or if there's any surprises that came up through what we've developed thus far, please share that. So maybe 5 minutes to talk as a group, and then 5 minutes share out, and we'll just grab somebody from each group.
Well, I think the biggest thing that comes out to me about those 5 groups is you can see the 2 groups that are worried about West Albany. And that's all out. It's just
One of the things that frustrates the public so much is the lack of understanding.
They gave us a quick discussion on it last break, or last meeting. It really just had to do with the amount of repairs that's needed to bring it up to what they consider usable space. Some of the classrooms are interior, have no windows or anything.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty significant to me to tear down buildings that are no older than the rest of them. I feel like we could do improvements to those without tearing down the ground and starting over. Yeah, I mean,
The original pool was built using money that was agreed to by the city, telling you.
I
Well, no, what do you think? What do you want to tell us? Now,
How do we?
You know, last time.
It looks like the session, maybe 3 spots, maybe 4.
Well, what they did last time is they came up with we based all of our actions and thoughts around
That is something that you're, but I said the other thing, I think 4 of the groups brought up that finishing Athena, which does seem to be a reoccurring.
You'll have a better handle on this. I questioned the building of the new school.
we did that testing.
We see those kids, is that, if we were gonna spend the money to build a new six center,
Dancing on the potatoes, yeah, well,
Well, I guess I have like this. What I do know is that we're gonna need to set that
I think they came up with some
boundaries or boundaries.
but the majority of them,
Having doors over here
and when it tested out.
you're having 5 places, so it was compared in one spot. And so it was built in a really nice, simple, little hard, like you could solution that wouldn't cause a lot of because you could potentially build a K5 and make Meadow a K5, and then they could all feed in that way. Which would be nice on some level. There's a lot of things that is not efficient and nice about that. I think you could potentially, but it was brought in, get to the same place where you could provide if you were willing to reboundary and shift some of our to some of our other elementaries because they're not necessarily. But it depends on places are similar activities. But in my own mind, this is not based on like a lot of money. It's more based on just what I see. So that's distribute them to basically Liberty and Rochester. Right there. You could, it's 100 days. They was put into those 2 places. So that's where we usually have to that has to happen. So that's where I count. So I mean, there's just like so many different. So then I don't know if I was looking at other because if that whole thing was closed.
These are the proceeds.
Those are the 2 that are smallest, EDA and but I don't know. I've been having all these conversations about busing because if we have less schools, it would be less of an issue with busing. Not less, but we have less places to go. So,
In the old days, some of them were developers and contractors bound to create those.
Usual function of the school district, all the boundaries. We did it all.
There's the district.
I think in my experience, I went to, what year did you do when all those small schools? Yeah, anyway, but because of where I grew up, my family changed like this.
But that big piece of property was even south side.
I was the only one year that he was close. My brother
Played
went
on that property 2 years ago.
yeah, so then I went to Millersburg. I went to kindergarten at Clover Ridge because none of the other schools, and I didn't
Because there was
go
so
back
much
to Millersburg
violence.
for first and second, and then Millersburg closed, and I went to Clover Ridge. And then I went to Memorial, and then I went to West, so that was quite
That's where I went. I went to Clover and then to Dance, and then back to South.
And most of the, I went to school and went to South, or went to Dance, and then South. But the ones that did Connor went to Memorial and West. I don't know exactly why I was that way. But then it changed to South after high school. I just that better because and then that wasn't yeah, I mean it just so and our buildings are not most of our buildings are not full.
All right, everybody.
See, I feel like we're missing some good information.
I'd like to maybe get some feedback from each group or some thoughts. Start over on this table here.
Yeah, a lot of discussion and like just revealing that when we did bond last time, it was all about warm, safe, dry. Now, we don't have a catchy phrase like that, but a lot of the projects seem to be along that same warm, safe, dry still. So we're spending all this money, but we're not really getting much unless you focus all the money into one brand new school, then your whole budget's blown. So it's frustrating, it is what it is. I mean, that's just the pay we live in. But, yeah, other than that, not too discussed.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Tim. Over here.
Well, I think, along the same lines, Tim, when we went through the exercise before that created this, that was what we heard, safe, warm, dry. So we prioritized vestibules, ADA, et cetera, and then get to the HVACs, get to electrical. But now, I'm really thinking that we need to go worst to best. So we know the worst schools that are either on death row or are, there just doesn't make economic sense to make huge investments in them because of their life cycle, and then to move to warm, safe, dry. So now you separate those so that you now have enough budget to work through the rest, and then you go to the wants and, the wants, I guess. That's just
Efficient and effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely another approach for sure. That's good to hear. And we'll have a good opportunity to look at prioritization again, similar to what we did last time here. So over here.
We were kind of along the same lines of utilizing buildings that we know will be more long-term versus the ones that have the major repairs that we need to invest in, North Albany and Central specifically, especially after Tanya and I got to go see the new building at South Shore yesterday. It was very impressive. So something to that effect of not wasting money where it's like a money pit, I guess.
Right. Great feedback there. Over here, team.
I mean, it was similar to all of that has been discussed. Figuring out what we're working with first before making some of these decisions seems like the best path forward.
Great. And over here.
We kind of all talk separately, but, and with others, so we do not follow these. But I guess I just have a concern, or in thinking about, how many of your per pupil allocation students are impacted by sort of each dollar, and trying to put it in some sort of a ratio. I know there's never a perfect mathematical science, and kids and parents can't be put into spreadsheets, but I mean, both of the high schools have significant capital needs, and that's not going to get any cheaper. And really, when we think about our graduation rate, 95, 98% of the kids are going to exit from South or West. And AOS does a good job with a pretty small and specialized population. So I just wonder, how much can you direct the impact to help offset some of those big ticket items there to affect more kids?
Right. That's very similar to kind of what you're.
Well, and then again, just to put maybe a little finer point is just conceptually, we make decisions on where we live based on where our kids are going to go to high school. Oh, I live in the West South Albany district. Oh, I live in the, and then you base what's when you realtors will tell you when they move in, I'll show you when you move in, tell you that here's the high school that they'll go to, what's graduation rate, and what's their attendance rate, and what's their soccer team look like, and it's because it all feeds that way. And that was to try to put a point on, maybe philosophically, we say, what are we aiming for here? Because if not, it's the elementary school is to coin a term, not probably popular, so it's a shotgun approach. You're putting a little bit out everywhere. At least we can narrow it down and then start to make a message, because at the end of the day, we're going to try to talk to a community to say, hey, we're asking for $100 and odd million. Where is it going to benefit? And if we start putting out little bits and little bits and little bits, the big majors never get done. And quite frankly, it doesn't make the little schools any better when you're just, well, we'll put a, because that's my point. What we're trying to talk to, but just to think that way.
Yeah. Great. Excellent. Really great work, team. With that, We'll take a 5-minute break, and then jump into the next activity.
5 minutes. What do we decide? Versus what that
I just said I
costs.
want to know.
We're gonna take 5 minutes break.
Goals, please. Who's here? Did you hear him? So kids, they kind of ride their bike all the way over. Yeah, but I was really surprised. All right, I know, I always feel like we need like the theater dimming lights, we like flash on everybody. Attention. I can do that for boundaries. I try to practice my mother's teacher voice, very loud. All right. So Jonah alluded to earlier that we were gonna kind of review, since we met last time in December, we've been working on costing data. And then we've also been taking the work that you guys did last time with our priority exercises, all those group numbers you looked at, and going through all the schools and going and looking at what those costs actually could look like at those schools. So within your packets, you will actually have more diagrams than what I'm going to show, but we'll be brief on some of this. We're actually going to end up doing the same activity that you guys did last time at the end, but with all this new information. It's really brief summary. So obviously you guys have seen this chart before. This is focusing on the needs of the district, kind of looking more at the facilities things. Across all district, we've made a few updates, and you will all have these obviously in your notebooks, and you have an 11x17 for the exercise as well. We've cleaned up a few things. We took out stuff like technology upgrades, kind of a hard one to put dollars at. We know it's a need, but we can focus on other things. So we took some of those out. We condensed the ADA upgrades because in all reality, you're probably gonna have to, if you do work at a school, you're gonna need to do ADA upgrades across the board at that school. So we just kind of lumped those in so you have fewer tickets to try to figure out where to put it. So a few of those other things, Lauren has asked us to include like replacing the intercom and master clock system. So this is broad across all of the schools except for your newest ones, Meadow Ridge and Oak Grove. So that was a need. It's a large ticket item that is needed across the district. So that's included in there. We also did make a few other changes. You'll see the dollar amounts as well. But mechanical repairs, I think previously we had shown fixed heating, and that was identified in the educational adequacy of teachers complaining about like the heating doesn't work at my school. But in all reality, since a lot of you are considering adding cooling, we said, well, adding cooling, let's say, fixes everything at this school. It's a whole kit and caboodle, that's why that number is so large. But if you don't do that, then you probably still need to fix that mechanical. So we wanted to include a larger dollar amount because fixed heating was 7 million, I think off the top of my head. And we're looking more at like 22 million. Ooh, don't do that. Where is it? 24 million to fix. And we're talking replacing boilers at the high schools. We're like big things. So we want to make sure that that's on the docket because those are big items that need to be considered. On that chart, we showed our math, we showed our work of talking about those escalation costs and those soft costs. So you can see where we came up with those really large dollar amounts. That is what that is. So on your tables, you've seen this one before. We have not changed any of this. This is looking at your capacity, enrollment, building condition index, the FCI index, and then your demographics of your site as well. So just take those things into consideration when we're looking at the exercise. And then just a reminder of those bond scenarios that we looked at, the levy rates. So the target that kept your levy rates equal or even so that you don't have an increase was 168 million. Okay? Except not new news. So part of the work that we've done, I alluded to, is going through all of the schools and seeing what the stuff that you guys have identified in those priority group exercises means on all of the schools, means at each one of the sites. I'm not gonna bore you with going through every single school, because a lot of them are very repetitious. So I'm gonna more specifically talk about specific scenarios that we looked at, just so that we could all make sure that it works. And this is what Jonah said was the test fit, so don't look at too much of the design. It's very high level. Does it work? Can it function? And then can we get pricing on it? So the first one that we looked at was Millersburg. So a few people had mentioned adding an elementary school at Millersburg. So we just did a really quick test fit, looked at the site. There is a seasonal creek that runs through, so don't want to put a building in the middle of the site for that instance. But a 500 student school fits on the site. And actually we even overlaid Oak Grove. Copy paste, and it works. It worked, fit pretty well. So, nothing crazy there. And it would be a 2-story school, just so you know.
Why didn't you put the model, oh, never mind, ignore me.
No worries.
Yeah.
So just to make sure, the area with the white outline is the,
That would be the school, let's say the boundary, so you could keep,
that's the property that's available?
this whole wonky shape is the property available.
Okay.
But with that seasonal creek running in the middle,
Cuts that off.
yeah,
Sure.
so, like I said, whether that school goes up on, I'm gonna butcher
What's
the
the
name.
acreage? Do you know?
I wanna say
No, okay.
50?
I wanna say it was
20.
Isn't it?
but it might have been a little bit more.
I should have that number.
Okay,
I
20
apologize.
plus?
Yeah, I think so.
Part of it's a wetland.
Yeah.
Part of it's wetlands, yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing, no floodplain that we could find, so that was the good news there.
So just
Yeah.
full disclosure, there was a map on the wall at Millersburg, because we've been in discussion. This property had been available to us, is that correct, Dick? But the map that I saw on the wall was that the school was sited in the southwest corner, where nearby where it says test fit, and not in that current site. The architects have put that there. And I don't know how that would be worked out, right? Okay.
Yeah, so like you said, just test fit, trying to make sure that all those amenities would fit on the site. South Albany High School, so I know this came up in most of the groups actually, so I will caveat this with also, we've run these scenarios, we've talked with the principals, we've kind of talked through a handful of options to kind of condense it down. These are not exhaustive, so just bear with us. But, so you can see, and you'll see on all the other schools, we have the full list, and this is just literally everything that you guys have mentioned as the priorities, and what that would mean, where they would mean. But then we also looked at, the costing information included replacing buildings 2 and 3. And so what this is just showing is taking out those 2 buildings, right by the number 1 there, and then replacing it with a 2-story school or building. So that would house all of your classrooms that are there now. We would maintain what your capacity is.
Show me again that location.
I know, I'm sorry. This guy right here. So you see that little it'll be a 2-story building. So.
In the middle, where that courtyard is?
Yes. We would try to avoid the courtyard as much as possible, just for constructability and keep it open. So part of this also would mean then you would be, yep.
A couple questions on that. Would you connect that to the commons area? So you would have an interior corridor that would go into the cafeteria space? So connecting one in that building with...
This building?
No.
Oh, sorry, that one?
Yeah, with the cafeteria, which I think is...
That one right down here.
Yeah, that's the cafeteria.
Yeah, so unfortunately, South Albany, it's all
Okay, never mind.
California exterior, corridor style, so.
So that's the shop and technical building connected with the math and science building.
No worries.
But Bruce, I think what I'm hearing is just the idea of making sure as much as we can connective.
That's correct.
Internal buildings, try to get away from the California model as much as possible.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you said,
So I think in that scenario, you would definitely need to be kind of more thoughtful about how that all came together because they are so spread out. And then of course, you would want to think about what the square footage inefficiencies might be, because that'll drive costs, but
yes,
we could.
The other question I had is you had mentioned turf fields for baseball and softball.
Correct.
Does that include full turf infield and outfield and lights?
I think the costs were based on square footage, based on typical field size. So, and that was just at the high schools.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It included football as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from what we understand, they're all in rough shape, so full replacement. So part of this.
That's a turf replacement for football, because they already have turf.
Right.
It would be a brand new install for softball and baseball at those schools, because they're currently grass.
Yeah. Correct.
Right?
Correct. And you'll see, so you'll know, like, we're showing new turf fields, but then we're also showing irrigation, and that's more like we're just showing all of the options that we've been talking about. So it would be one or the other, if that's the road that you choose, right? So part of this also includes, we were asked to look at either renovating or replacing the auditorium, just so that it's comparable with West Albany. So you'll see this little guy here, that would be God, I keep doing that, I'm sorry. That would be a renovation to the existing space. Now, could we get that full 700 seat capacity that
That's
West has?
160 seats at the present time, and it's a small little theater. I helped design that.
Yeah, so there are some challenges with renovating it. It will probably never be
Right
comparable.
next to it is the student center, but it's inactive.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So then we also just looked at the idea, like, could you fit that 700 seat auditorium elsewhere on the
The
site?
original plan for South Albany High School had the auditorium close to where you have that number 3.
Yep. So just showing those fits. And then obviously we just have listed out all the other items that we've talked about: secured vestibules, roofing repairs, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Yeah.
Just a quick question on the idea of the new portion, the 2-story new portion. Will that fit in and not disturb the industrial building on the right?
This guy right here?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, it fits. That's why we do the test
Okay.
fit, so it fits. There's a lot of architecture behind trying to make sure that it works and getting the program right and actually designing that to fit. But
Right.
overall, the building square footage does fit.
Thank you.
Moving on. Okay, hot topics. All right, West Albany High School. So all the teams looked at a handful of different scenarios with West Albany. So for the SIGs, we're showing getting rid of the existing classroom wing that wasn't renovated as part of the previous bond. And that would be a 2-story classroom addition. This is roughly where it was shown previously, kind of 2 classroom wings and a connection. You demo the existing building, obviously. We would also then have to replace the wrestling room and the team rooms, I believe it is, as part of that renovation, just because they're in that older existing building. We're showing the gym renovation or replacement as a future or another option. Jonah alluded to the fact that we do have a few years left on that seismic grant before we can really do anything with that. So you could opt for that to be a future renovation at some point within the next 10 years or whatever.
So what happens to what is designated as 1?
This is 1, so we would replace all of that. So you demo the building and it could be fields. You could put your new soccer field up there.
So it would be replaced by the other, this
Yep.
2-story addition?
Yep.
It would replace the green space that was lost when they put the new building up, because it's just basically flipping the whole site
Yeah.
over is what it is.
You could do parking, play fields. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And obviously you lose a little bit of memorial too, so we try to make sure that we account for that, some of their play areas. So, okay. And so this is just a blow up of kind of that scenario. This is just the test fit showing kind of what those classroom wings, making sure that all of those classrooms fit in that area.
Is it a 1-for-1 replacement?
It would be a 1-for-1 essentially, so we went through, calculated.
How many classrooms there are, how many
teachers, how many things, yep, the full program.
library and all that.
Classrooms as well, Bob.
Yep.
Excuse me again?
Looking at some of them are 600 to 700 square feet.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
So actually making them a
Are they
normal typical.
960 for the new? That's what the.
Square footage.
It's like roughly 950, right in that realm, yeah.
That's what the 960 is,
Yeah.
what the
First standard.
Would you add more,
ultimate classroom size.
would you add more square footage for science classrooms?
So just standard programming, yes, science classrooms get a larger square foot because you have more casework, there's just more things in those classrooms. But we try to keep regular classrooms to 950 or so, because then you only have to have one exit.
That's right.
So a lot simpler.
So, one thing I would add, again, looking at our population estimates, and if you guys remember the capacity of West Albany when it had been the single high school for this entire community, and I think the capacity was around 2,000.
Well, it had that many students in it, but it was not that capacity. The capacity was about 1,400.
So we are looking, Bob, exactly at that number,
Yep.
1,400.
We double shifted
Okay.
for several
Because there
years.
was, Bob, wasn't there 18?
1835.
I love that you know exactly.
So once again, just test fitting. This is just showing that actual gym replacement, what that could look like, right sizing the wrestling rooms, team rooms, locker rooms, kind of doing that whole shebang. And then obviously up here, we would put the play fields.
I have a question about the science labs.
Yep.
So are you saying that they would be a science lab and a classroom together?
We went with just traditional, we went with the square footage programmatically, so
Okay.
that's,
Because I know after speaking with the science teacher, he would like to see a classroom space and then a lab separate because they literally had yellow tape quarantine off the back so that it wasn't.
and those are all discussions that happen much later down the line. Once you hire an architect, once you pass your bond, hire an
Right.
architect, and work through those things. But really programmatically, we're just looking at,
Okay.
sure, yeah.
Do we know when the last construction was done, were the facilities upgraded and put in place for an expansion?
See, this is a great question for Amy when
I don't
she's
know.
here.
I can answer that. That we absolutely talked about, and there was a rendering, and I'm gonna go over and look for it, because I left everything, and, yes. And there was 2 wings, and there was a media center connecting the 2 wings, and the whole build there was a conceptual drawing.
But what I'm wondering is, when this construction happened, did they take into account the needs for plumbing and power?
Yes.
And all those things are
There's-
sitting there ready to go?
Yes, there's a
I think
phase
Rick can tell
1
you a little bit more.
and a phase 2, and all the mechanical, as Pat can attest to, is on, there's a 3rd story that I didn't even know.
But, yeah, the plumbing was all, I mean, it was addressed, if you look at how it was done, everything, there's a lot of it was stubbed, ready to go.
Okay.
And, because where they're going, the connector, there's a gap, they built it with an air gap right now between the gym and the new construction, so you could take it down. And then add on, but then that courtyard area that's kind of off outside, that was supposed to be built around, so that brought everything you knew, and all services came in, are all central coming, so it's really ready to go, just to plug in and go, just keep going.
And I'm assuming you're leading to there are there efficiencies in the cost because of XYZ, maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean-
so, yeah, there would be some efficiencies, but obviously with a whole new build, you still need mechanical spaces, you still
Right.
need to do all of that
But
sort of
they
stuff.
did put a lot of the mechanical for the new build, and like Pat said, there's 2 feet between, and if you go on a tour, you'll be able to see, they put a metal plate on the whole thing so that it wouldn't disturb any of the new building.
I have that rendering up on my computer, and I'll set it up there at the end.
All right, I'm gonna move forward. All right, so I've heard a lot of people talk about NAES, North Albany Elementary. So a handful of the scenarios talked about replacing the modulars. So there are currently 7 classrooms that are in modulars at NAES at the moment. So we looked at, okay, could you replace those classrooms with actual built classrooms that fit on the site? And so you'll see that in this classroom wing, we would add a connector, we would add restrooms to make sure to bring stuff up to code. So it fits. Part of that would also be, it was mentioned adding an actual dedicated gym at the space. That also fits on there. And we included stuff like, okay, obviously this classroom wing is building over the play area, so we need to make sure we have an area for the play area. Sidebar, and I'll show you here in a second, in looking through the records when we were actually looking at the Millersburg site, we noted we were looking to the floodplains, and the majority, or a huge chunk of the site is all in like the 100-year floodplain. So trying to avoid that area in general to do an addition, development cost, insurance costs, a lot of higher costs when you do that kind of
Can I
thing.
ask a dumb question?
Sure.
Why does middle school need a play area?
That's elementary grade school.
This is grade school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, elementary school.
Oh,
NAMS
okay.
is to the east.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I got you, okay now, thank you, I thought you said middle school.
They love the jungle gym.
I mean, I like jungle gyms as an adult, so I don't know what that says about me.
They do.
Jody's in favor of adding like trampolines and things like that.
Oh, yeah?
Big giant swings.
It could be fun.
So, in part of these discussions with the district and the principal, we also realized that there are a lot of improvements that need to be made at Nays. And so you can see it would, honestly, to bring things up to code, it would be a renovation of pretty much the entire school. So we also did just for a test fit, once again, to see if you could replace the school with a new school within that site. And so, once again, floodplain couldn't build in that area. So we were able to add a complementary, the same size type of school, obviously with a gym, an actual cafeteria, full admin, all that on the site. You theoretically could not disturb the school during that build time, and then build the school, tear down the existing and replace it with parking, actual play fields, all of that.
And so when you did that exercise, because this reminds me of the old Oak Grove, but once you realized how much it costs to renovate it, you might as well just build a new one.
Exactly.
And what were the cost differences between your two scenarios there? Do you know how big it was or what the difference?
I'm trying to remember, you put me on the spot. We basically, classrooms, I don't remember the cost offhand, but we do have the 500 student classroom, which is comparable to Oak Grove. That is in the costing information
So that's a
there.
two-story school.
That'd be a two-story school, yeah. And that's really, you get a little bit more efficiency by building a two-story. And it helps you kind of maintain the existing school during that build.
I think we're hitting on something really important with Nays specifically. The return on your investment to renovate Nays, and there's a diminishing return. Because this one is just fraught with all kinds of challenges, to be honest. Even if you look at the one before this, that was about the best you could do for the classroom orientation, and anybody that's ever taught in a classroom that's facing west or east knows how challenging that can be. So it doesn't even have good solar orientation. And then in the administration wing, there's just really no way to get accessibility in that. It's a CMU box, essentially. So Nays is that's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Can you clarify CMU?
Yeah, concrete masonry units.
Okay.
Yep.
Big blocks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cinder blocks.
Yep.
Do you look at like this one, if you could fit Oak Grove on it?
Not specifically. More, site would be kind of weird, but I mean, we're showing a 500 student school essentially, so, which is comparable with Oak Grove.
Because not to take away from you guys, but one of my biggest complaints is we always feel the need to redesign a new building when they're building schools every year.
Yep.
And we have new ones here that we can just have the school designed already and put it on our piece of property.
Yep, so you're not
And you
wasting all
could use
that
the
other money.
driveway, use a common driveway, they do that, and just come on in from the north, come into NAMS and come in and use the same footprint that you have for
Yeah.
Oak Grove.
Jonah, any comment on reusing architect's drawings?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's, when you get into prototype design, you know, there's authorship challenges and things like that, of course. You know, in an ideal world, it works well. Like you see it at Takina, works really great, I think, at the time, and those two other schools there. But those sites, for the most part, there's some similarities as far as topography and things like that. Now, the constraints are different around them, but it's always a challenge. Can you do it? Absolutely. You know.
So, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
We paid for the plans and own the plans.
Yeah.
Is that correct? from whatever school.
Technically, the architect owns those plans. Technically. Generally speaking, I don't know what the contract was in that one, but generally speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So speaking of Takina, so we also looked at Takina because this came up on quite a few of the lists from the groups. Just right sizing, showing that we could add those 6 classrooms right onto that wing. It's basically what exists at, South Shore, look, my brain just blinked, sorry, in Oak, yes. So along with that, we also discussed then we would need probably to add parking for your staff, so looking at a parking extension there on the side. And then probably adding a covered play, because there is no covered play currently on the site, so larger student population, probably should have those things.
Would we remove the modular classrooms and make those brick and mortar?
So what we would do, because I believe only one of them is being used at the moment, and that's a whole capacity evaluation thing, but we are showing to demo those modulars, so you could incorporate those.
Incorporate that inside the building so you wouldn't have any kids outside.
Correct. So I think that was one of the consensus along a lot of the groups is getting rid of those modulars. Let's get rid of them. Then a few other things. Obviously, you see all of those other items that we've kind of talked about, district-wide upgrades throughout. And then what else? What else? We'd also look at, why do I keep doing that? I'm sorry. Updating your playground area, obviously, too, to accommodate those more students. So, Takina. Less controversial Takina, apparently. Okay. And then the district asked us to also just look at the pool. We haven't really talked much about it. So we were just looking at replacing the spectator seating, replacing the acoustic panels, and doing some renovations to the ductwork. There are quite a few repairs in there. You'll see those dollar amounts in your little packet of information there. Those are based on repairs over the next 15 years. We looked at the ODE's dollars just for, let's make it nice and spiffy, brand new, full functioning facility. So
I would like to make a comment about the pool.
Sure.
The pool initially was a project funded by the federal government on a grant. And it was signed off by 3 entities in the community, the city, school district, and Lynn Benton Community College. And for many years, the district operated that pool, and then with cooperation of the city. And now I think the city operates it with cooperation of the school district, but I'm not sure of that current arrangement.
That's correct.
But it seems to me that the city has some skin in the game.
And I know, David, you've mentioned that they would trying to work with the city to maybe chip in some of those dollars. I might be paraphrasing, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we're just looking at what those overall dollars mean.
Sure.
You can put it on your priority list if we think it's a priority. So, all right, going forward. So I primed all of you. So all of you have on your desk, we're gonna do basically the same exercise that we did last time. With all of this new information, all of these revised costs, you will have your little tickets with all the information. Prioritize the costs that you think are necessary with trying to add up to that 168 million or dollar amount that you think would be wise. Do I need to explain any more than that? I don't know. We did it last time. Sure. Sure.
So I understand that at West Albany, you could still have the existing building with the students in it while you're building those 2 new wings.
Correct.
But at South Albany, you're removing 2 buildings that house students right now. Is the cost for like a modular or something to go in during that construction time in this cost?
So as part of the scheme, we did look at where kids would be temporarily housed, where that fits in the overall development cost, if you could squeeze in there some way. Okay. I don't think it's not gonna be a $20 million community.
Right, okay.
So we place students in South and that attorney would be built.
Yep.
That's when we put the temporary modulars to put on that building.
Yep.
And then they'll come back in with possibly the theater after construction stuff.
Okay. We will reconvene at 8 o'clock for a report out. So just like we did last time. That's your priority.
Right, you did, okay, so
This is not correct.
So we need to create a budget. I think our student priority and prioritize what we think on this. I talked about this more once, and I'm trying to explain it. They want to separate it out, so all of these little elements
Of our entire capacity and out of the elementary. That's what I think got happened. So we probably just not what I was trying. I'm gonna write myself a that is not the plan.
That came up a bunch on the last time. Like, what was Oak Grove design?
Oak Grove obviously we assign more, but when you look at how many classrooms are actually for other programs like special classrooms, then it reduces your overall answer because there's so much growth. So there is more capacity. They're just utilizing more classrooms. Yeah, I guarantee you.
So that's what we're seeing, how to figure it out.
Yeah.
You would put it where?
Okay, well, then you can keep them Grove, it's saying it's $3.99. I feel like they were up by and I think our fire. No.
So, I guess I go around. Oh, gosh.
So that's, okay, question. The numbers don't match. Which one? This is the same problem as last time. So this is $3.99, and on the books it says $6.12.
On Oak Grove.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to see.
$3.99.
Oh, so we have, those were all draft reports, so they probably updated them since with, Amy did all of that. So she can speak to it best. But went through and realized like what the actual program was actually going on in those classrooms to right size the actual like capacity versus.
There's a lot of work went into this though, because if it's 612 and enrollment of 362 and educational adequacy of 89.2, then those numbers are completely.
Like, is that like?
161 million.
If you could write your total down, don't just write your total.
Put another comma and another zero. I know, I told, I
I
said it when I was doing it. I was like, I'm not used to doing all the zeros. So it's not the kind of
Well,
I
like
usually work
Andy
with.
was
It was
saying,
a little bit stressful.
conceptual numbers
We have that on there.
relooked at.
Okay, good job. And ours has some color to it. Oh my
Are
God.
they too,
Some artistic creation.
are they too low right now? No, probably not. Perfect.
There you go.
16.7.
Are you gonna be our star? I feel like you.
I feel like I've already stirred up enough people.
No, you go ahead. I don't think either one is.
What did Dave do? He did it last time.
All right.
Why don't you just kind of put that down at the bottom here, just
Talk through. Got a couple over here.
maybe just draw a line over the number.
All right, which group wants to go first?
We'll find, we'll
I had to
find,
look at the chart to see what these things.
we'll have a fundraiser, we'll sell donuts. Yeah, there you go.
All right, everybody. We're gonna have.
I know. I had dinner with Joanne Chambers last night.
Oh, she's good.
She's really good.
Oh, good.
I tried it at least once.
What a wonderful.
Yeah.
My two boys worked for when they were in high school. And along with a lot.
My mom and Wayne are cousins.
All right.
I should have.
No, no.
You were deeper, you were later.
Lady doesn't know, I know, it's true, right. She's kind of like my mom.
Well,
All right, can we have your attention up front, everyone,
We went with the
please?
concept that some of the big ticket items, whether it be new elementary schools, high schools, those kind of things are probably too big and they're gonna suck up too much of the total availability. So we said, well, we're looking, trying to sell a bond, we're trying to raise some money to try to do that. We need to come up with a plan that gives a little bit of something to everybody, so it's probably the easiest one to sell. So as you can see, we just went through and took all the replacements, improvements, figure that would stretch out in different ways across the district. Safety, kind of back to the safe, warm, and dry concept, and it came in at 167.5. Very simple.
Good job.
Here we go.
We took a much simpler approach.
We can add
All right, for ours, we're kind of calling this Promises Kept, finishing the west expansion. So we figure if you do that, to focus on the south. And then really the focus of the remaining budget, we are over 212, including these ones here, recognizing that. But these are must-dos. You got to keep the roof sealed, you got to keep the boilers running. And then back on that safety aspect we talked about on day one here, making sure everyone has a safe place to go to school. We recognize the elementary school is critical. My thought on it is if we were going to propose something like this to a bond, it'd have to come along with the lines of, over the next 5 years, or the next 10 years, we're going to close X amount of schools. And in doing so, we will build a new elementary school to consolidate those dollars. So that was kind of our thinking, but really focusing on that promise kept from the last bond that finished the work of the first bond.
Great job. All right, next group.
No, you did such a good job.
I'll carry it because you're wounded.
Jody and I already voted you in. And you need the pictures.
Boy, you know, I don't know who's leading.
Ours was a little less of lots of different ideas. We didn't concentrate more on thinking about passing the bond levy too. Was we need to do something for West and South, because they're the two high schools in town. That's how you're going to get everybody in town to agree. If you get one going more than the other, you're going to have differences of opinion. You're going to have people vote no because West got more than South, and so we're just trying to get in the head of people. And unfortunately, we went way over 211. But we were also thinking, with the West thing, can we cut some of that and do part of it now, part of it later? With the new school, we thought the new elementary school being built, and I know I'm out in Millersburg, and I know I'm on the city council in Millersburg, so I'm not self-serving here, please. But, you know, Millersburg's the land in Millersburg is being donated to the school district by City of Millersburg to be able to build the school. I think the elementary school in Millersburg would take some pressure off of Timber Ridge and off of Meadow Ridge, and then that's gonna leave some room over there for some of the, if we were able to go through and close a couple of the schools that are that have
A lot of
these other issues that we have to spend a lot of money on to upgrade, and close a couple of the smaller schools. With a bigger school you got, it's time to start thinking about efficiencies and what we can do. Rather than having 14 elementary schools, we've already heard, you know, the district our size should be about 8 elementary schools. So, you know, we need to do something somewhere along the line. We've got to start deciding that, okay, we've got an old house here that's got drafty windows, a roof that's falling apart, doors don't open all the way. Are we going to rebuild our house with $300,000, or are we going to build a new house? And I think we've, you know, it's a hard decision, there are hard decisions to make because elementary schools are people's social centers. But at some point, you gotta make a decision as a group and as a town, of what's best for us economically. And in regards to your question about the economic zones that we have, the new businesses that are going out in Millersburg, I don't know how many have gone out there. We got $300 million worth of buildings being built right now. Yes, they're getting some tax breaks on the property taxes, but being an ex-auditor of school districts, the property taxes are spread out statewide. So if we don't do some economic development and give some of that back, other towns are doing it. So they're taking money away from us by having their economic development. Let's take some from them and have economic development. But that's our thought process.
The first line is increasing.
Oh yeah, the Takina school. I felt that was very, very important because, you know, just the thought process about Central School and Takina, they're together now already, basically. But Bill having more classrooms, they can move them out there.
Okay, front group, number 4.
Okay. Process.
Nobody was volunteering, so I'm just gonna.
No volunteers in this group. We're colorful.
Oh, wow.
We're not very efficient.
We don't follow directions very well, but.
We just went for the first paper we
Yeah, we just started, you know.
I like it.
There's a bunch of- All right.
Anyway.
We took the approach that we had to be warm, safe, and dry, and we needed to get through our ADA and upgrades, get through the asbestos abatements, secure the vestibules. We feel very strongly there's a trade-off, not only economically, emotionally, and for family values, to have turf fields for all of the community to use as well. So that's an investment that we feel is important, as well as the tracks, the Takina School, the classrooms, roof repairs were in the dry, mechanical repairs plus some cooling, which in our little group was last time was a $15 million ad, so we put that $15 million ad classroom specific somewhere, let the halls be hot, let administrators sweat, but no, excuse me, but to give those kids a place that's a learning environment. So, and we could raise that another 8 million so we could get to 169, just so you, that may be a couple offices. Modular replacements with permanents. When you go to windows and in envelopes, you're starting to build better environments so that your heating and cooling requirements were, you know, reduced. So some of that big number of the 115 on the cooling then is offset by some of the things we do here. Obviously the district, the hardware, we've got to be safe, and those are, you know, as Susie said, they're man doors that are to the outside that, you know, they skip the vestibule. That's where they just don't close. They don't remind anybody they're closed, and we've got to have those or you're going to have break-ins and have unfortunate circumstances. In the lighting replacement also becomes part of the efficiencies. We weren't aware, but we're going to throw in for the intercom and clock. You know, there could have been apps that are given to all the teachers. No, that doesn't work either. I will tell you though that we, I would say personally, as well as I think we discussed it in the group, instead of building a new elementary school in Millersburg at this moment, there are enough schools in the district that we already have to talk about, how come we have too many, that we have to find a better way to allocate our space and utilize those for today. Busing 6 miles is a no-brainer in the school district. So if you're gonna go from Millersburg into town, it's not that big a deal. I'm gonna make this is a personal comment so that it'll go to Dick because I just love Millersburg. Millersburg was meant to be an industrial area, not meant to be a residential area. It just happens to be a beautiful place to live. So now there's twice as many people that live there that
lived in the old days when, 1,100 people could go to a lot of places to go to school. Someday it needs a school. I don't think it's now. And I'm big on carrying your word, and if it's in writing somewhere about west and about south, then yeah, there's probably some things we need to do. We need to do them for sure. But I will tell you that when I was involved in the first bond project, we talked about having an auditorium that was going to be used by the community, and we built that for the community at West Albany. We didn't say we have to build one at South, equal or better. So now we're going back talking about building equal or better, blowing out a couple of rooms. If both those schools can survive for another 10 years, then we need to find a way to fix what needs to be fixed today and work our way to extrapolating. Otherwise, you look at the other examples and just cut off half of this and go spend that kind of money. Anyway, we're at $170 million. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Mayor Lasker? I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna post it.
They get an F on tape.
We got an A conversation or
It's
an
starting to self-destruct.
It might self-destruct.
Our coloring skills out there.
Some of those slides are going in a bit half.
All right, so I think it's important to know that, one, I feel like we want to still know, what does the community think about the promises that we are floating out there about west and south? Like, we need to know that, and so I think that's a big polling thing. But where we started with this was having a civic planner on your team, kind of lead you toward a discussion about where's the growth of the community. And so much of our discussion was really around where are the children going to be? And so that was a caveat that we started it from. And the other one was we closed North Albany Elementary School and Central Elementary School. We closed those two buildings, and that's how that led to this decision, which is basically, if the kids are gonna go out there towards Millersburg, we gotta somehow, because we gotta put them someplace. If we're really gonna close Central and Nays, we've gotta have a 6th class addition on to Takina. And so, we felt like this, South really needs those two buildings replaced and needs some attention. And so from then, we were like, okay, what else can we fit in that? Because we can't fit west, we wanted to fit the west, we can't do that. So we then started just selecting things that seemed to be important that we could afford. And so that's where we came with a safety issue with intercoms and clocks, hardware, safety, lots of safety issue sorts of things, ADA upgrades, we couldn't see how you don't fix your roof. Lighting in all of the tours, lighting just kept coming up, and it got a lot of attention, so we gave it window replacements, acoustical upgrades, and for me as a principal, this was so cheap and acoustical. If you know anything about hearing loss and learning and how educators are not trained in that, but it can make a huge bang for your buck for a tiny little bit of money. That's why I just weighed in on that. And then this was another thing where we need to see if this will pass in a bond, because we got word that turf and track sorts of things don't tend to poll well. And so we put them on there because they have the safety issue that we're dealing with, but we were like, we're not sure that they would actually poll and actually get a voter to pass something like that. So that's what we came up with.
Really great work, team. So we got about 15 minutes left. Would love to hear kind of additional.
So I would like, as they do this though, I would love So Tanya just went where I was thinking, which is I'd like to see a polling question. What polling questions, what would you want to ask the community about on this? Because we have, seems like about half and half new with the high schools, and then others are just doing a long list. What questions would we ask the community? Because we will go for a poll if we have enough now, or it can wait till the next meeting, right? So, but if these things need to be really thought about, I don't want to have tension, like with everybody walking away going, gosh, I need, you know, Dick needs his elementary school, Pat wants the high school, or, you know, those kind of things. I'd rather do a survey that we can get an answer, or we can wait another month and just kind of see where we're at. The other thing I would say, Bruce asked some really good questions about high school turf fields, right? So a lot of schools have done an infield for softball and baseball with a grass outfield. They're still very playable because most of the action occurs on the interior. Bruce is also correct that these would be carpet overlays because the engineering has already been done on both football fields, right? So some of these can be winnowed down and made to look more efficient, right? Probably all of it can be, right? As we dive into this and begin to sharpen pencils. So think about that as we're doing this. Jonah, back to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really good. So, would love to hear that feedback as we go by. You know, again, we got 15 minutes, so maybe we could just go for each person.
Can we get a clarification on the promise, the West Albany promise? Was it a complete rebuild? It was just talk?
I was on the Dog and Pony show the last time we did this.
Yep.
Because I was working for the district at the time. I wasn't part of this committee, but I was out there trying to sell it. And that's exactly what we told everybody we talked to. We can't rebuild the whole high school at once, A, because we're gonna displace everybody.
Right.
B, it's just the cost, we have other things we need to do. So here's the plan, we're gonna do the first phase, and that's what we did. And then in time, we were gonna flip the whole thing, because we took out all the greens, we took out all the space, and did that. And then on the next bond, we will finish the high school.
But to your question, Dave, it was not on the bond statement.
Yeah, it wasn't on the
It
bond
wasn't
statement,
written in-
but all
so
of
it
us
wasn't
were
written
told to go out there and sell it that way.
Right.
Did it
So-
say phase one in the bond language on the back of voters?
No, it didn't on that.
I mean, we can get into semantics, and we can get into what it said and what it didn't say. I guess that would be a great poll question.
I think that's a really important.
Would you support a new bond if West Albany, if nothing is done at West Albany?
Well, and I think that, the word nothing, is a huge hinge point here. If West Albany was worked on and moved further,
But how are we gonna move?
and not all or nothing.
But how are you gonna move it further? New doors?
That's my next
On
question.
the old building?
Well, that would be something that we would need to think
I guess
We
about.
can talk about more than 2 phases.
Yeah.
So Pat, what about the way they drew it with the 2 wings? What if you did one of the wings?
They already
Well, what are you
said
gonna
one.
do with that 100,000 square feet of all those classrooms, that 1957, that 1953 building?
Yeah, I think once you get to that.
You gotta, I mean, that would be a great thing for some people, is to just go walk that and understand. Also, talk to the, be there when they're trying to move classes. That entire student body moves from the front door to the back, to the side, all the way over on Queen Avenue through one door. Or they go traipsing through the old gym. I mean, the way it was done, if you just look at it, it looks like someone just put a lean-to off we're gonna put another bedroom out the back of the house someday. But right for now, you're gonna walk out through the breezeway, and you're gonna push the tarp out of the way, and then you're gonna go in. If you really look at it, what was built is beautiful. But it probably serves from a classroom perspective on a daily basis, probably serves 20%. Susie, am I right?
There's 6 teachers.
Huh?
There's
So
six
I guess
teachers.
that's the point, so.
Well, so let's think about the questions to ask that relate to that, because I think that's.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'd say the same thing for South, too. I mean, it's sad that we're sliding back into this west-south thing again. It's just tragic that we are, but I guess that's where we are. So it's like, you want to ask the same thing at South. Does this district invest in its high schools, or, you know, what's it willing to do, what's it willing to do? And if that would be great, that'd be great to get an initial answer, well, then we can quit talking about some of this stuff and actually make some decisions.
Yeah. That's great.
So you're in favor of a survey soon?
Well, hell yeah, I think you should, that would be wonderful to say, hey, do we even want to address this or not? If it comes back and says, you know, we're not gonna vote for it if we don't, or we're not gonna vote for it if you do, then at least we can move forward, but to go out to, because that's major. If you want to put that out there and say, hey, and then pull the switcheroo, that's not a good way to do things.
But the other thing that I would say is, I would not want to, as a superintendent, at this time, commit a group of people I don't know yet 10 years from now, that they have to do that no matter what, right? Because, does that make sense?
I'll argue the point is, at some point, if we keep turning a blind eye to these things, they're gonna have to do it no matter what, because the damn things are gonna fall, they're gonna be so unusable for education, for high school education.
Yeah.
Both sides. Both sides. It just so happens,
Absolutely.
just so happens that South has a 20-year, West has a 25-year head start.
Yeah.
South was built in the 70s, at least that's when we were all gonna go to school outside, I guess. But that's, you know, so that's, I guess that's where I'm pushing, is to say, go out and say, hey, because it's pretty also, it's easy, because back to my original statement earlier on today, the community put their head around, at some point, my kid is gonna go through one of these schools.
Yeah, understood.
And then it gives direction, then we can either move on from it, or say, oh crap, we better do that. So then it's gonna, then you gotta start figuring out, what do we do on the elementary side? It'll guide the discussion.
Just to add to that about kids wanting to live in certain school districts for sports. I know that, so yeah, my son is head coach for West Albany baseball. And he has parents that move to town, and they determine where they're gonna go to school based on the sports, if it's football or baseball or whatever. They will look to see which one has the best record, who's done this or done that, and that's where they will decide to go live in that area.
Which means you should also thought very long and hard about a change in boundaries after all these people have bought houses on that land. There's a lot of wins here for us.
That is something I'm wondering about.
Pretty much now.
And like how.
I guess I'm gonna speak up a little bit too, but if the last committee of this, it promised West Albany was gonna get most of the bond money, why are we meeting? I mean, we should have had the survey done first and then, you know, because we're wasting our time right now. If West Albany's gonna get the majority of the dollars, then let's move forward and let it happen. You know, and I'm not advocating, I'm not saying that just because, you know, I'm out in Millersburg and I think the elementary needs to go. In fact, that's one of the polling questions. What, you know, what does the community feel is a higher priority, elementary, middle school, or high school? When we've got a limited amount of dollars.
I think another question that needs to be asked is, if we're looking at adding an elementary school, how does that change the conversation if we're also looking at closing the elementary school?
Yes, that's definitely.
And boundary changes, that's what I keep thinking, like, there's gonna have to be some change somewhere there and how.
Definitely there too.
Yep.
The school in Millersburg certainly has big impacts on Meadow Ridge and Timber Ridge.
Huge. I mean, it's a very lovely idea. I would fully support it. I just don't know how realistic it is.
So, is there a question that you want to word, because we have a lot of physical property issues, something around that,
Say that again.
physical property, you know, the
Issues.
maintenance and the lighting and, you
So
know.
like how important is it to upgrade versus replace?
Yes.
Or potentially,
We need to be able to make
Right.
what we have.
Would funds be better appropriated towards maintaining existing facilities or
Sorting can be adjusted. I
replacing?
think we need to look, because we have a lot of those areas.
In the way that they set up the polls, I don't know if they, like, let's say, for example, you had questions around, would you want the majority of your money to go to the high schools? And then that would automatically skip them down to a series of questions that are just about that. Or I would like to see more money go across the district, and then they'd have a series of questions to ask. So like, hey, I'm not interested in spending money on middle school or elementary schools, I don't even want to respond to those. I don't know if the polls are designed like
Well,
that.
I can't speak for JL, I just know he's done it before. I think, how we word those questions to capture these. But whatever we would do, if we're going to do it now, and I think it's important, and so that we don't carry tension about what we want, that may or may not be reflected in the electorate, right? So let's do the work and get an answer. But JL's done this, he's done it a lot of times. He will promptly tell me this would be the best way to elicit an answer there or here. And then we would float that to you guys via email so that we hopefully could turn this around by March 3rd.
Yeah.
Right? And that would give us some guide, well, let's just be prepared. It may not come back and give us anything really, well, it's hard and fast, this is the obvious answer. That isn't always the way it goes when you have a big community, but it can help to guide us. And I would rather have everybody here looking at the work between us and among all of us. We surround this work, and there's a community that surrounds us. And so to say, hey, one thing has to be preeminent or whatever, it's far better to remember that context. And, just what I said, I believe we have a duty, I certainly have a duty, to advance and have this school district be great for the next 10 or 15 years, and have another group without, of course there's going to be another group beyond us, right? And that they must advance the work, and we're gonna have to understand that we can't do it all, right? We just can't. We must always distinguish between what we can accomplish ultimately and what we can accomplish in a given period of time. And here's where we are. Right?
Our budget right now that we've all been working with is kind of not increasing the amount.
That's true.
So what if you added another poll question that said, would you be willing to raise that rate if we were to include rebuilding all of West Albany and doing these improvements in South Albany?
So that's a good question.
When South Albany bond was proposed, it had 3 parts to it. South Albany High School, by the way, $4.125 million.
I believe that.
An auditorium at 1.2, and a swimming pool at 800. And those 3 items were on the ballot. You voted for all 3 of them separately. South Albany passed, the other 2 items went down. I thought it was brilliant if you didn't want those other items. We eventually got the pool because of a federal grant, but the auditorium never occurred.
Great. So separate bond?
3 separate issues, 3 separate items.
Right.
On the bond. In 1970?
1969 or 70.
Because South Albany's first graduating class was 72, so it had to
72,
been
that's correct.
70.
I do want to add, and I wrote a note here to contact Morgan Allen, former South Albany Rebel at the time, center on the football team for Rob Saxon, who was the coach. He is currently the COSA, the Confederation of Oregon School Administrators, chief lobbyist, and he sits on the Awesome Grant. And we've had a conversation where he was rather optimistic because we are like 130th out of 180 on the list. But over a given period of time, once districts have passed and used the Awesome funds, they drop off. So there's a lot of schools that are ahead of us that are not eligible ahead of us, right? And so I'll get an update from him. I know he's not available, legislature's in session, but if I can get an update from him and an explanation in writing, I'll talk about that. That would be $8 million if you pass the bond.
So if we pass
Which would
the
add
bond,
to
the
that.
state would give you $8 million more.
Yeah.
So it's a state match.
One other bond question, or question interesting is around athletic fields, either improving or updating. Because that would include the track, turf fields, possibly playground, other outside amenities. How important that would be in part of a bond?
I'm trying to paraphrase.
Right.
Are you on the spot?
Yeah.
That's a question to ask.
Yeah.
Great.
I kind of wonder if the polling can help sort of educate the community while also polling the community. in terms of the ideas of, first of all, they need to understand that there's declining enrollment, and they're gonna say, well, then why are you building a new school? But if they understood that renovating two older properties in a place where there's not, the kids wouldn't, that's not where the population of kids are that need those buildings, is that renovating those two buildings would be more expensive than building a new building in the area where the children live. I don't know if you can,
How you can word that?
if you can word it in a way that kind of educates at the same time, but gets in a question of whether or not they get supported.
Yeah, and I think we have the grace of, even when the plan is sent to the board, then we have 9 months to begin building a really good message. Right, and it has to encompass some of that, right? Because I believe we can't be good stewards and not do some work in these buildings, right? But I also believe we can be a good steward for the community to not seek some efficiency.
Right. Great. Well, we're at time, folks. I don't want to cut off conversation if there's any other questions we want to ask, but so our next workshop, March 3rd. Sounds like there's general support to get a survey completed before then. So we'll review draft concept plans at that time in addition to that, and then confirm approaches to elementary school, middle school, high school, and then look at some prioritization of concepts. So anything to add?
Was there a question about going back to tours, or where do we leave that question? The tour facilities?
As far as, David, do you want to talk?
What was your understanding, Dave?
My understanding, we'd hold off and have that discussion next time.
Okay.
And based on tonight's activity, if you want to go see the school, email me. And then if both the people want to go to the same school, we'll coordinate together. But if you want to go see something, it's not a burden to go.
Great.
Tomorrow I have the great honor of buying Bob Stolick lunch, and I'm going to get a really firm history lesson, and I'm looking forward to that. But I also, if there are burning questions or things you want to talk through with me, I'm always open for that, and I'll buy. You were included in the group, Dick. Hey, I want the best restaurant in Millersburg, if there is one.
Also, please keep your name tags, and if there's anyone at your table not here, can you please help me make sure that they get the packet of information I forgot to collect them? I don't want Chris on me later.
Like your shoes.
Thanks for.
Yeah, I saw it.